King Andile's turned into Tsietsi. We brought that clip for you because most of you are used to seeing our weatherman on that side of the set, but today he's coming from this side of the set. A very good morning to our meteorologist, Tsietsi Monare, to talk to us about his upcoming trip to New York City. Yes, to attend the United Nations Summit on Climate Change. A very good morning to you, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
New York. What are you doing in the US?
Well, I'm attending a climate change summit, as you said, organized by the United Nations, and I will be moderating a thematic session there. So basically, I will be conducting the speakers that will be there. We're having co-speakers from, some heads of state in other countries, and we'll be basically talking about what climate change, how it's affecting, the whole world actually, and Southern Africa at large. And we'll be looking at how policy formulators or policy makers can be assisted by climate, researchers as well as meteorologists and climate forecasters in getting those impacts dealt with and getting the message across to communities all over the world.
Getting the message across to communities is what I want to pick up on now. There's the belief that, there's a lot of things going on in South Africa. People need to eat. People need to go to school. There are some fundamental issues that often take the focus. Climate change, not so much all the time. How do you plan on addressing that, and what should be done to put it back on the agenda?
Yes, that's actually one of the most difficult things to do, is telling especially poor communities and really risk or communities that are facing bigger risks at climate change, in that, people are more concerned about eating or having a meal for the next couple of days. They're not focusing on what's going to happen in 2050 or 2065. That's the least of their problems. But there are many things that we can do, especially starting in small levels, like in the high schools and primary schools and so on, and teaching people about living in a conservative way in terms of their consumption ways, in terms of littering and looking after the planet, planting trees on Arbor Days and so on, or not just on Arbor Days, on every single day, doing green tips for people to see what they're actually doing and how that can actually help them later in their lives and so forth.
What is going to happen in 2050 or 2065 if things go on the way they have been going? What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, well, according to research, we've seen that in South Africa, for example, I'm picking South Africa because we are here and people would be more interested in that, is we'll see a decrease in rainfall patterns, particularly in the Western Cape province and so on, but we'll also see a severe increase in the intensity of rainfall. So there might be less rainfall, but when it actually rains, it might rain very hard for a very short period of time, and that could lead to many disasters. If you think the runoff, increased runoff, and soil erosion and so on, and disasters such as flooding homes or low-lying areas being very flooded. We've seen those visuals from Philippi. We've seen some of those in Limpopo province, where the border with Zimbabwe was actually closed off for a couple of days because of the flooding. Trucks couldn't cross, which is a very big economical impact in South Africa. And once again, we need to get these communities to realize that what we're doing now, especially if we leaving a big carbon footprint, or live in the way we are living now, burning fossil fuels and so on, that this could have a big impact on us in later years to come. And 2050 is not very far from me. It's about 36 years from now, and I can guarantee you, it's going to happen just like that, and then we'll be there.
When we talk about global warming and greenhouse gas emissions, there is the belief that, South Africa, in fact, many third world nations, if I can call it that, or developing countries, are not the number one polluters, that your China, that your America are the big guns, and that they are the ones who have the responsibilities to stop what they're doing. What is it that we can do in little South Africa to change anything? And some people just throw in the towel saying our little efforts don't help. The big guns are the ones who need to make a change. What do you say to that?
Yes, that's one of the issues why it's so difficult to get communities such as South African communities to realize the impact of climate change, because we believe, we are quite small, we are not as developed as places such as the United States and so on, and so we cannot be polluting that much. But every single person on the planet actually has an impact, or rather an effect on the climate and the atmosphere at large. So if we try to curb what we do here in South Africa, use less electricity, we do not use so much coal that we're using, even in rural places where we're burning mbaulas and so on. We can try resort from that, move away from that a little bit and start using more cleaner products, and try looking at nuclear energy that we're also investing in here in South Africa. Those small little bits are actually helping. You might think that it's not having an impact, just as much as the small little bits that are bad are having a long-term impact as well. The same way here in South Africa as well. I mean, if you use things like less plastic, or if you burn less fossil fuels, you use natural cooling systems like opening windows and actually maybe going outside instead of going for your aircon. If you drove less, people that, say for instance, live in Auckland Park and work here at SABC can walk to work or cycle to work and so forth. Use lift clubs. Those can actually work. I don't know if you've seen on the national highway, on the M1 alone, you see lots and lots of cars and there's only one person in a car, whereas we can have maybe 4 or 5 people in the same car and reduce the number of cars on the roads, and that alone will have a big impact in reducing what we're doing to the planet.
And then, of course, there is the competition between the developmental agenda versus the environmental agenda, where developing countries are saying, well, we need to develop as well, and we need to burn fossil fuels, we need the factories, we need the coal, we need all of these mechanisms that are causing all this harm to the environment. We need them so we can develop like the West. So then you find the developmental agenda overriding the environmental agenda. Is there a way that we can somehow marry the two, that we can progress and develop without harming our environment?
Well, of course, very well. And I used to be in that trance before, thinking, we need to develop, so can we burn as much as the other people have burned before? But when you read the research, these impacts are really, really severe, and sea level rising is also quite big. The ice caps melting, they're quite severe. It's not something to take lightly on. But yes, there is sustainable development is one big issue that's been going around. That we can build, we can develop, we can get cars and all of that, but we can do it in a green way. We can get cleaner fuels out there, and we can actually get cleaner cars on the road. And that you've heard about your hybrids and so on. Yes, and we can use less fuel to stop burning fossil fuels. That is very, very. You've heard about green buildings. There's a lot of buildings that are built in such a way that they can actually use lesser cooling from air conditioning and so on. And there's been many, many other projects as well, even in rural areas. There are people who are working on alternative energy, trying to develop houses in such a way that can actually use solar energy,
wind energy. Yes.
Exactly, to power small things like your televisions and your radios in the home. There's been many, many other projects like that. We just need to focus on those and actually continue.
Tsietsi, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain as you go off to New York City. When do you leave, by the way?
I'm leaving tomorrow night.
You're leaving tomorrow? Start spreading the news. He's leaving tomorrow. New York, here at Tsietsi comes to attend the United Nations Summit on Climate Change, and he'll be leading a delegation there, just discussing some of the issues we've touched on. Let's leave it there for now. We'll try and catch up with him while he's on that side of the world, but let's take a quick ad break now. More after this.